What's going on, and welcome to another edition of the Sundown series. Yes, we are still in Illinois. Today we will be visiting a town called Effingham, Illinois. I can honestly say that these towns that I'm covering for the state of Illinois, I have never heard of. But then again, I don't know that many cities in Illinois. Of course, you know Chicago, and I'm sure there may be some other ones I can't really think of right now that I have heard of. But this would definitely be one of the ones I'm not privy to. So, doing my, scavenging hunt to look for some information about Effingham, I came across the author who wrote this book called Sundown Towns. And his name has actually come up a lot when I was doing my research for these towns. And his name is James W. Lowen, and the name of the book is called Sundown Towns, A Hidden Dimension of American Racism. And I believe it was published back in 2005. I might have to look into getting that book. But he actually did an article where he talked about various towns and everything like that, but he really highlighted Effingham. So what I'm actually about to read to you is an article that actually has quotes in it directly from his book about this town. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. George Met remembers when African Americans were not allowed in Effingham after dark. The Lions Club put a Labor Day pancake breakfast, and the Aunt Jemima pancake people sent a black lady portray Aunt Jemima that day, recalled the longtime area businessman. But I also remember the Lions Club got word she could not stay overnight. This was in the early 50s. Times have changed from the days when so-called sundown towns refused to allow minorities within their borders. When the sun went down, Dr. James Lowen, an expert on the subject, is scheduled to speak about his research Thursday evening at Lakeland College. Now, this article I'm reading from was posted October 7, 2015. The author of Sundown Towns, A Hidden Dimension of American Racism, Lowen says such policies were rampant during mid-century America in all areas outside the South. Examples of the practice in Effingham are cited throughout his book, published in 2005 and available at the Effingham Public Library. One of his sources claimed the movements of African Americans within the city borders were even restricted during the day. So that means that they operated as a sundown town even while the sun was up. That's a new one from that. Well, it's not so much new, so to speak, but I put it like this. When it came to sundown towns, black people were allowed to be probably, in those areas, but they just couldn't be there after the sun went down. So you can pretty much guess when it came to those fall and winter months, a lot of black people, they had to be out of there by 4 o'clock, most likely. But it said they were even restricted even while the sun was up. So that means that they couldn't even be visible while business was operating. It is well known any black people arriving in town were not to venture beyond the block, the bus station, or train station were in, Lowen quotes researcher Michelle Tate. Tate reported that one older Effingham resident told her police patrolled the train and bus stations to make sure African Americans did not leave those premises. Lakeland history instructor David Sealer, who lives in Effingham, said bringing Lowen to campus is part of a larger effort by the college to increase the level of ethnic diversity on the campus. Saylor is a member of the College Inclusion and Diversity Education Task Force. We believe that diversity is a part of college life, but we have a pretty homogeneous student population. Diversity is something our area needs to have on its radar screen. It's been on Lowen's radar screen for nearly his entire life. Although I grew up in Decatur, ringed by sundown towns, I never knew it as a kid, Lowen said in an interview via email. I thought black folks were just showing good judgment by not living in towns like Niantic, Villa Grove, and the like. But then Lowen went away to college in Northfield, Minnesota. He said it was during his time at Carleton College that he first learned about communities that banned people of color from their environments after dark. Because he grew up in Illinois, he thought he would do most of his research in the land of Lincoln. I thought I would uncover maybe 10 in Illinois and 50 nationwide. I had no idea. I am now at 507 sundown towns in Illinois alone, which is about 70% of all the towns in Illinois. Did you hear that? Now, this book was published back in 2005. He said that he came across 507 sundown towns in the state of Illinois alone, which is about 70% of all the towns in the state. Now, Of course, I don't have nearly 507 towns for the state of Illinois, nowhere close. But now I see why I have more sundown towns, or villages as some of them are called, in the state of Illinois compared to other places. Yes, Illinois, if y'all didn't catch the memo before, Illinois in my Sundown series has the most towns in it. That's why I said going into Illinois, we were going to be here a while. And I just started on Illinois a few weeks ago. We probably won't be out of Illinois until sometime in July. I think I had told one of my subscribers that before. So yeah, we're going to be in Illinois for a little bit. Lowen said he found similar proportions in other northern and western states. In his book, Lowen also quotes David Blair, whose father worked in the Greyhound Station cafeteria in Effingham during the mid-1960s. He would sometimes give black bus drivers a 2-block ride to the Benwood Hotel. White bus drivers could just walk to it from the station, but the black drivers had to call a cab and wait longer for the cab to show than the walk would have been. Lowen singled out Effingham Sundown history in the 2006 article of the History News Network at George Mason University in Virginia. Before 1950, Effingham posted the notorious sundown signs, and while they came down by 1960, the town's policy did not change. African Americans were prohibited beyond the bus station and the train station. In interviews for this story, several area residents recall being told that a sign proclaimed Effingham's unwillingness to welcome African Americans after sundown. I heard Effingham was a sundown town and that they even had a sign where the new high school is now, said Elsie Gray of Altamont. That sign would have been on US 40 at the west end of town. Lowen said towns with that kind of history suffer from what he calls second-generation sundown town problems. He said they're often characterized by all-white police forces, teaching staffs, and public employees, and adds that such a monolithic situation harms the larger society. Lowen said he encourages American communities with sundown past to adopt what he calls the Lowen 3-step program. Admit it, apologize, and state we don't do it anymore, and that last statement has to have teeth. Effingham Mayor Jeff Blomaker said the days of Effingham being a sundown town are a long past. I would tell you, as an official representative of the city of Effingham, it would amaze anybody on the city council if we still had such an ordinance. We would refute any reference and quickly take action to rectify that situation. Local historian Delane Donaldson, president of the Effingham County Cultural Center and Museum Association, said he has no recollection of sundown town behavior during his youth in the late 40s and 50s. I've never seen any hard evidence of Effingham being a sundown town, but there were people in that time who were hostile to people of color. But it was a private kind of hostility rather than anything official. Now, he probably would say that because he said he was a youth at that time, but then again, you got to ask him at what point in your youth were you in? Were you like elementary age? Were you toddler age? Were you a teenager or what? Because if you was a teenager, you had to have seen it. Jean Sutter of Shumway remembers a hostile attitude toward minorities in her youth, but said it was something she never understood. It always amazed me how people treated people here when I was growing up because they looked different. One African American living in Effingham today says she still experiences racism from time to time. Phyllis Grice, who grew up in Oklahoma during the 1970s, recalled how her boyfriend's brother told her he hated her because of the color of her skin. There are still people around here who are very racist, Grice said. Others, she said, seem fearful of African Americans. I've seen people hurry up and lock their doors when they saw me coming. I was with 2 white people at the time and we just busted out laughing. At first I thought people are still that ignorant. Then I look at it and realize if I've never been around white people, I might not know how to act either. Most of Grice's friends in Effingham are white, so she knows there are plenty of people who embrace diversity. If everybody was the same, how boring would that be? Different shades of people make the world go round. And that's pretty much the end of the article. So you pretty much now just got a glimpse of their past right here through the eyes of the residents that were there and through some of the from the author who wrote that book. But I'm still stuck on the 507 sundown towns that either still exist or existed at one time in Illinois alone. That's a lot of towns. 507, and he said that's 70% of all towns in the state. That means 30% didn't practice it. That's a very low number. So when Harvey says that Illinois practices a certain type of racism, I, not to say I didn't believe him before, but after reading that, I definitely believe him now. But that concludes this edition of the Sundown series. I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments, and I will talk to you in the next one.